Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. When Deborah and I, after we got married, we ended up going to Israel, and then on our way back, we decided to backpack Europe. So Deborah actually returned the engagement ring, the diamond ring, and we took the money and we decided to backpack Europe. On one of the trips that we had, we were in Italy, and we get on a train, and the train, all the cars in the train are completely packed except for one. So we're looking at all the cars. We went through each one. We figured that somebody must have like thrown up on the train that car. There must be a problem with that particular car. Why is nobody else? And there were people standing. They would rather stand than go into like one of the car seats to sit down. And so finally we said, okay, we have no choice. So we went into the car, and immediately I opened the door, and immediately I understood why that one wasn't full. And the reason was because there was a nun sitting there. And who wants to spend this long trip? It was a long trip. Who wants to say this long trip being so good sitting next to the nun? But we had no problem with it. I would love to sit next to the nun, with the nun. So Deborah and I sit next to the nun, and the nun is so nervous. I couldn't figure it out. I saw her the whole time. She's like so nervous, and she's looking at me. She's playing with her beads, and she's like trying to figure something out. And then all of a sudden, like in the middle of the trip, she turns to me and she goes, "Moses?" So I said, "Oh, yeah. Moses, I'm Jewish, yes." And I didn't speak Italian. But what I could tell from what she was saying is that it was at that time, it was a big story that the chief rabbi and the Pope were meeting for the first time. So she alluded to that. So I said yes. And I thought it was a very funny occasion. I actually thought about it at the time, and I was thinking, it's funny because she thinks that the chief rabbi is the big name, but really it was, it's Rav Moshe as the name, Rav Moshe Fine, a little guy is in the Lower East Side, or off in the Lower East Side, not the big names. He would be the name, although he wasn't alive at the time, but, those are the type of names. Rav Eliashiv in his small yeshiva, those are people who are people going to for psach. I bring this out because it says something interesting within this week's parsha. The parsha tells us, "V'nosati mishkani b'sochachem, v'lo sigal nafshi eschem." I'm going to establish myself within you, within your midst. "V'nosati mishkani b'sochachem," I'm going to be amongst you. And then the very next pasuk says something so bizarre. It says, "But I'll make sure that I won't be disgusted by you." What? If I'm going to live with you, but I'll make sure I won't be disgusted by you. What does that mean? So Rav Shimon Schwab has a beautiful interpretation of this. He says the same thing as the people with the nun, that it's very difficult to be with the nun, because if you're with the nun, so then you have to be on your best behavior the whole time. The same thing, if Hashem is lahavdil, if Hashem is in our midst, it's difficult if God's next to us all the time, if we're living that type of life. So Hashem says that if you put yourself out to be in that life, I'll overlook the issues that you have within your life, all the bad things. If you commit to work on it, to work on this relationship, to be in my midst, so I'll overlook any problems that you have anytime that you are not focused and not acting 100%. As long as you're committed to the relationship, you're trying to work on the relationship, so I'll overlook that other parts. And it's so important that we in our lives, sometimes we're afraid to be within the shul. We're afraid to go to the yeshiva. It's easier to be at home. It's easier to daven at home than to schlep out to the shul. But it's also, when people are home, maybe they don't get dressed up for davening. They don't put on their suit and jacket, right? When they go daven, they don't act the same way. But when you go to shul, you have to act in a certain way, and it's harder. It's harder to do. But that's what helps define the relationship. That if you go out and try to make the relationship with God, then God will be more overlooking at it. And the truth is that the relationship will be much stronger if you make the effort to go out. Now we're trying to bring people back to shul. We're trying to start again, build again after this whole long period of time where people are away, and start to think about how can we bring more shirim, more Torah, more relationship. How can we build up the shul? So we're asking you to come in, and it may not be perfect. It may not be perfect all at the whole time. But if we commit to the relationship where we come to God, and God comes to shul, and we have this relationship, then Hashem will overlook other issues that we have. And even if we're not 100% perfect when we come, Hashem will overlook it, and we'll be able to build the relationship up again. I wish you a great Shabbos.